Introduction. The geography and geology of Sumatra. Sumatra is the westernmost and next to Borneo, the largest of the Great Sunda Islands in the Malay archipelago. If we do not consider Greenland as an island, Sumatra is, according to its area, the fourth largest island of the world. Its length is about 1060 meters, its extreme breadth 248 miles, and its area, including the neighboring islands except Banka and Biliton, is 180,380 square miles. Thus, Sumatra is nearly 4 times as large as Java, almost as large as Spain, and 13 times the size of the Netherlands. The northern half of Sumatra runs roughly parallel to the Malay Peninsula, from which it is separated by the Strait of Malacca, and the southern end is separated by the narrow Sunda Strait from Java. Unlike Java, Sumatra has a series of considerable islands, arranged like earthworks in front of the western coast, which faces the open Indian Ocean. In relief, Sumatra consists of a high mountain chain which runs along the western coast, descending eastwards to a huge tract of flat, alluvial land sea with many large rivers and their scores of tributaries. The chain extends for a distance of over 1,000 miles and contains numerous volcanic peaks of heights from 5,000 to over 12,000 feet. The whole system is known as the Barisan Mountains and consists in general of two or more folded chains running parallel to each other with an intervening valley. Along this Along this valley lies a string of mountain lakes from south to north: Ranan, Kurinci, Singkaran, Maninjau, and Toba. Lake Toba is the largest in its midst, and and it in its midst the last island, Pulau Samosir, is situated. The river system of Sumatra is extensive and of great value to the country, owing to the proximity of the mountains to the west coast. The rivers there run in valleys with a steep slope, have a very lower coast, and are in general unagrievable except near the mouth. The extant rivers, however, run through alluvial plains, have extensive drainage areas, have extensive drainage areas and form the principal and often the only means of communication. They are of such value to the community that many of the districts they water are named after them. South of 3 degrees north, the following are the important rivers in the order name. The Asan drains Lake Toba. The Pani, with its two tributaries, the Bida and the Barumun, and the Rokan, flow into the Strait of Malacca. Then comes the Jambi, the largest and most beautiful river of Sumatra. Below this flows the Musi, the only other river of the island which compares in size to the Jambi. Below Palembang, the Musi splits up into a number of channels which spread out amidst a vast unhealthy swamp covering an area of some 4,600 square miles. The entire east coast of Sumatra is of such low formation that it is difficult to say in the case of many broad stretches whether they belong to the land or to the sea. But there are no bare mud flats and banks as in Holland. All is overgrown with tropical plants. Viewed from the sea one can only distinguish the land from the water by the thickets of long evergreen mangrove trees which sprout out of the mud. This low alluvial coast grows rapidly. These rivers bring down mud and the tree roots hold it fast. At the river mouths, round banks are formed, which hinder navigation. Often the rivers overflow inland, discharging their muddy contents over the swampy land. Sumatra, like Java and Borneo, is formed largely of strata of the Tertiary period, although it contains also two schistose formations, one of one of which is anterior to the Carboniferous period. The Tertiary series are more complete than in Java. The diverse volcanoes, so characteristic of the whole archipelago, are due to the Quaternary period. Climate. The climate of Sumatra resembles that of Java and is hot and extremely moist. The wind system of North Sumatra differs from that of the great part of the Dutch East Indies. The northeast monsoon blowing from December to March, and the southwest monsoon from May to October. Southern Sumatra has the highest temperatures, and the mean annual temperature for the lowlands is about 80 degrees at Toba at an elevation of 3,772 feet. This is 69.6 degrees, and higher altitudes show a corresponding reduction. On the whole, the temperature of Sumatra is slightly higher than that of Java. March, April, and May are the hottest months. January and February are the coolest, but the difference does exceed 2 degrees. The different wind distribution causes a variation of the seasons. Thus, in North Sumatra, October is the wettest month, and February and March are the driest, whilst elsewhere the wettest months are December, January, and February, and the dry period extends from July to September. Accordingly, the rainfall varies considerably. The normal average rainfall for North Sumatra is 95.71, for East Sumatra 106.27, and for West Sumatra 122.32 inches. The west monsoon gives the heavier rainfall, and the fall is accentuated in West Sumatra by the high mountains. Fauna. Notwithstanding the proximity of Sumatra to Java, the fauna of Sumatra shows a greater resemblance to that of Borneo than to that of Java, this being especially noticeable with regard to the fauna of the east coast, while that of the west coast and adjacent islands is more allied to the Java fauna. The orangutan, common to Sumatra in the northeast and Borneo, is unknown in Java. The siamang Hylobates syndactylus is found in Sumatra only. There also are ape species common to Borneo and Sumatra. Both Sumatra and Borneo have elephants, tapirs, the Malayan bears, the Malayan bear, and two-horned variety of rhinoceros, all of which are not to be found in Java. The one-horned rhinoceros and the wild ox, or banteng, Bossundicus iriquoid in Java, are unknown in Sumatra. A species of antelope kambing-hutan lives in the loneliest mountain districts in this island. Dog tigers are common in Sumatra and Java. There are none in Borneo. The Sumatran fauna also includes the black baboon Cynocephalus niger and the hot deer of Babirusa, which animals likewise are to be found in Nias and Mentawei to the west of Sumatra. Other animals native to the main island include the fox-nosed monkey Tasius, the slow loris Nycticebus, the lemur Galeopithecus volans, the flying fox, the civet cat, the Sumatran hare Lepus netzeri, and the wild dog and pig, species of birds exist in Sumatra which are unknown in Java. There is a difference between the fauna of North and South Sumatra. The orangutan, the rhinoceros, and the hawk deer are present only in the north, while the tabby and certain varieties of monkeys are to be found only in the north of the island. There even is a difference in the bird world between the north and the south. Force is of the opinion that the boundary between the two territories should be sought for in the stretch between Padang Laos and Sumatra, where one can go from coast to coast without ascending over 1,200 feet and along a young tertiary formation. This writer believes that a sea channel existed here until the end of tertiary times, separating North and South Sumatra, and that in this time the two sections received the greater part of their present day fauna. Tigers are found everywhere in Sumatra and are very numerous in some districts. On the whole, they are useful animals as they keep down the number of boars, which are very harmful to cultivated fields. But when the tiger is old and no longer fleet enough to catch wild pigs, deers, and apes, it has to be satisfied with poorly armed human beings. Such a man-eater spreads terror in the neighborhood and is a hindrance to social intercourse. The crocodile is much more dangerous to man than the tiger. These animals live chiefly at the mouth of the rivers and only sporadically in the upper stretches. Even where the crocodiles are the most abundant birth without taking proper precautions, and hence these animals, which less feared than the tigers, claim more victims. History. The pre-European history of Sumatra is of great importance for the understanding of the complex native cultures of European contact. Unfortunately, no uniformity exists in the interpretation of original sources, even among such competent scholars as Crom and Ferrat. Ferrat was one of the first historians to show that it was Sumatra and not Java which gave an early impetus to the expansion of Hindu civilization in Insulinda, Sriwijaya in the Palembang River Valley in Sumatra was colonized by Hindus at an early date, perhaps between the 1st and the 2nd century AD. At any rate, like Cambodia and Champa, this empire was in full cultural development in the 7th century. Actually, the first Hindu kingdom mentioned in Sumatra was that of Melayu Malayaland in Jambi in 644 AD. A short time afterwards, however, the kingdom of Sriwijaya was powerful enough to conquer Melayu and Banka, gain a foothold on the Malay Peninsula, and come into close contact with Java. The Chinese called the Edict of 695 mentions ambassadors of Sriwijaya. This kingdom was already the chief one of Sumatra and held Melayu as an subject state. The first use of the name Sumatra occurred in 1017. The man who at the time was king of Sumatra, Sriwijaya, sent ambassadors, a letter, and slaves to China. The thesis consisted of clothing, ivory, and Sanskrit books. The Chinese called this king Haji Sumatra Bumi, the king of the land of Sumatra. Crom does not accept any of the explanations as yet given for this name. Most writers believe that the word Sumatra is derived from the word Samudra, which is the Sanskrit name for the sea, and also for a later kingdom in Aceh. In this case, Sumatra is sealand, but Crom claims that it is peculiar to call an island sealand, and besides that, this name is of later use than the name Sumatra. The initial cause of the fall of Sriwijaya is said by Crom to have been two expeditions of conquest sent by Chandrabana, the king of Sriwijaya. Chandrabana landed in Ceylon in the year 1251. He pleaded friendship, stating, "We are all Buddhists." Then, treacherously, he reduced the native cities to ruins. Some years later, the conqueror turned again to the island, but this time he was forced to flee, leaving his harem behind. Among the treasures which the Frankish were forced to leave in Ceylon were mentioned royal insignia, shell trumpets, parasols, and kettle drums. Due to this weakening of the power of Sriwijaya, Kertanegara, king of Sringasari in Java, thought that the auspicious moment had arrived to conquer his rival kingdom in Sumatra. So he sent an army for this purpose in 1275. Traditions of the Malays ascribe a defeat for the forces of Java due to a trial combat by Carabao, but an inscription of King Kertanegara himself has been found engraved in stone on the upper Batanghari River on the present site of Minangkabau. This inscription calls for the recognition of the sovereignty of the King of Java and is addressed to all subjects of the land of Melayu, whether Brahmans, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or Sudras. Crom believes that this stone gives evidence that the ancient kingdom of Melayu was revived by Java in opposition to Sriwijaya, not as an independent state, however, but as an outpost of Java influence. As the Javanese influence on Sumatra increased, the boundaries of Melayu became further and further extended, but until the name Melayu stood for the entire island. Already in 1281, Melayu sent its own ambassadors to China and, remarkable to say, made use of two Mohammedan men for this mission, for their names being Sulaiman and Khamsuddin. At about this time, 1281, the Islam kingdoms began to form on Sumatra's north coast. They recognized the higher power of Sriwijaya as they did later that of Majapahit, but because of differences in religion that the bond could not have been a very close one. These kingdoms included Samudra, which was founded some time before 1286, and Perlak, which was founded even earlier and according to Marco Polo's account was Mohammedan in 1292. Marco Polo was the first European to visit Sumatra, traveling there in 1292. In the sixth chapter of his third book, he mentioned Java as being ruled by a great king and as being hidden. It was an unusual kingdom and rich, trading in paper and all kinds of spices. Marco Polo knew Sumatra, or rather the north portion of Sumatra, no better than he knew Java. In spite of the comparative sizes of two islands, he called Sumatra Java Minor. In North Sumatra, he found 8 small kingdoms, of which he named 6. The first he called Verlek, naturally Perlak, converted 2 Mohammedan merchants to Islam, that is to say, the city dwellers, although in the interior the people still live as beasts. Neighboring this was located Basma and then Samara, each under its own king. In the last named kingdom, Marco Polo remained 5 months. The natives of these kingdoms were still well hidden, as well as the inhabitants of the 2 following kingdoms, the Goyan and Lambri. Lambri is none other than Lamuri, Great Aceh, and Basma is Pasir. Samara is Samudra. The Goyan remains uncertain, although Marsden believes that it was Indragiri. From this account, Grom concludes that the small states had not as yet been converted in 1292 and that Samudra was converted between 1292 and 1297, the latter date being the year of the death of its Mohammedan founder. It is noteworthy that Marco Polo mentions a visit to Melayu but not to Sriwijaya. He sailed from the north and came to Melayu, which he considered a separate island. This mistake, as Crom and other scholars now believe it to be, of Marco Polo's remains uncorrected in the commentaries of his book of travel. Marco Polo described Melayu as a kingdom with its own king, language, and trade. In 1292, troops were sent from Melayu to support Java against the Chinese. The troops brought two princesses with them, and one of them was taken as a wife by the king of the newly found kingdom of Majapahit. This princess became the mother of the king of Melayu, Tuhan Janaka. After this Melayu commenced to assume the most important role in Sumatra instead of Sriwijaya. In 1299 and 1301, she sent ambassadors to China and colonized in the Malay Peninsula, where Malays who still adhered to Sriwijaya were expelled. In 1347, King Aditya Warman of Malaya extended his kingdom northwest. For stones bearing his inscription are found near Fort Vandenkapellen in the Minangkabau Highlands. It is in this same district, the center of the later Minangkabau, that all the later inscriptions of Aditya Warman are to be found. From a Chinese account of 1349, we gather that Sriwijaya was still a kingdom, but no longer a sea empire. Its ruler no longer bore the title of Maharaja. Likewise in 1370, Sriwijaya still sent mercantile ambassadors to the Ming dynasty of China. In 1377, however, Sriwijaya was definitively conquered by Java, and the old naval rivalry was at an end. The chief city had its name changed to Kirkisang, and the land became poorer and poorer. As Palembang won in importance, Minangkabau and Malacca reaped the benefit. This change of sites gave rise to the founding of a true Malay nation and the ultimate dispersion of the Malays through the archipelago. Malacca was established as a kingdom probably in 14th century. Early migrations of natives from Minangkabau had settled on the east coast of the island. From there in 1160, they founded the city of Singapore. This was destroyed by a general of the King of Java, and its inhabitants fled up the peninsula and founded the state of Malacca. In the meantime, Minangkabau also was becoming an independent Malay state. A stone found at Fort Van de Capellen and dated 1356 is inscribed in Old Malay, but with a mix of Sanskrit and Old Javanese. The kingdom now no longer considered himself a subject of Java, but took the name of King of Gotland. In 1375, this kingdom in Minangkabau was still in power and had gained much of the influence which Sriwijaya had lost. Malacca, which in the later part of the 14th century began to predominate as a sea power, was converted to Islam in the beginning of 15th century. Thus, Islam took a foothold on the peninsula somewhat more than a century after the founding of Mohammedan kingdoms in North Sumatra. As no Hurgonje has shown, Mohammedanism was conveyed to Insulandi by merchants from South India and not directly from Arabia. This great period of Majapahit as an empire lasted only about 45 years, from 1335 to 1380. The date 1478 is usually given by historians for the conquest of Majapahit by a Mohammedan coalition, and this year thus supposedly marks the fall of Hindu-Javanese power in Insulinde. Crom points out, however, that the Portuguese in later years came into contact with Hayton king of Majapahit. Perhaps Majapahit was first conquered by other Hindus and later by Mohammedans. The Portuguese first came to Insulinde in 1509. Everything in the east was still in the hands of the Heathen, with the exception of the kingdom of Malacca, a part of the seacoast of Sumatra, and some harbors of Java and the Moluccas, which belonged to the Moors. Sumatra north coast had been Mohammedanized a long time before. the Portuguese seized Malacca in 1512 in 1511. Albuquerque, the leader of the expedition, came to the north coast of Sumatra, where he dropped and cut off Pedir and Pasir. At first, he was well received, but eventually 20 sailors were seized by the Mohammedans. In July 1511, Albuquerque was in was in front of Malacca, and in August the city was in his hands. The fall of Malacca marks the beginning of European rule in Indies, with the with the downfall of the independent Malay states in the Moluccas, Malacca, and Minangkabau. The Hinduist Malays, now converted to Mohammedanism, spread everywhere in Insulinde, but penetrating as far as New Guinea and converting the coastal peoples to Islam. With Islam went the Malay dialect, the Malaysian languages. These Mohammedan Malays are often called Deutero-Malays to distinguish them from the Malaysian indigents of the archipelago. The European history of Sumatra consists of the struggle between the English and the Dutch for the possession of the island, of the victory of the Dutch, and of the long-drawn struggle which this nation had to obtain control over the natives, especially in Aceh. At first, at first it seemed that the Portuguese were to be the rulers over Insulinde for having conquered the important mercantile center of Malacca. They hasted to transport this harbor into a fortress for their fleets. Rightfully, according to the views of the day, this portion of the world belonged to them, for it had been conceded in 1454 by the famous bull of Pope Nicholas Episcopus, who had divided the globe and all its lands, discovered and undiscovered, between the Spanish and the Portuguese. The Dutch fleet first arrived on the scene in 1596. They sighted Enggano in 5th of June. The internal situation of Sumatra was at this moment most favorable for the foundation of a European commercial establishment. The entire island was almost without government. In the north, however, the Sultanate of Aceh lived its hours of glory and counterbalanced the powers of Palembang and Lampong for a long time Javanese. The central kingdom of Minangkabau was in full decadence. The debris of this power, which at one time ruled over a greater part of the Malay Peninsula and almost all of Sumatra, now merely included in Ragiri, Kurinci, and the territories which at present compose the highlands of Padang. The Hollanders at once took Malacca from the Portuguese and formed the East India Company for trade and rule. By claim of discovery, the English had risen prior to the Dutch in the East Indies. Among the early navigators to these waters were Drake, 1577, Cavendish, 1586, and Lancaster, 1591. But none of these explorers had set foot on Sumatra. Finally, 1714 until 1720, the English built a trading station on the west coast, which they called Fort Marlborough, and which, save for brief intervals, remained in their power until 1825. The English swiftly extended their rule in the west of Sumatra. They established several trading posts to north of Padang, at Natal and Tapanuli. This trade rivalry between English and the Dutch led to constant strife. Marsden's famous book on Sumatra, the first of that subject, appeared in 1783. The author was secretly for the British possessions on the coast of Sumatra. Raffles was Lieutenant Governor of Java 1811 until 1816. He was Governor of Bencoolen in Sumatra 1818 until 1823. He was instrumental in the founding of the city of Singapore in 1819. Since 1818, Malacca once more belonged to the Dutch. Now, the Treaty of 1824 was signed by the British and Dutch, which once and for all put an end to the rivalry of the two nations in Insulinde. The idea, and one for which Raffles was responsible, was to ensure the British possessions on the mainland, the Dutch possessions on the islands. So, the Dutch vacated Malacca, the British left Nias and Sumatra. Two further wars prolonged the difficulties which the Dutch encountered in gaining complete possession of Sumatra. One already mentioned was the prolonged struggle with the fanatical Mohammedan state of Aceh. This war, of series of wars, began in 1871 and lasted for 30 years. In its successful conclusion was due mainly to the wisdom and first-hand ethnographical knowledge of Atjeh, who acted as advisor to the Dutch. The Padri War started while the British still occupied the west coast of Sumatra. Certain of the more orthodox people in Padang Highlands became incensed at the laxity of the lay baton. Certainly, the prevailing material customs, bathing, and the use of opium and strong drink were not in accordance with the strict interpretation of the Quran. The word padri is Portuguese, meaning priest, and is used by Europeans and natives for the priests of both orders, Christian and Mohammedan. Persons were called padris who either were especially zealous in Mohammedan matters or who held some religious office. While the English were still in Sumatra, they bribed the padris to remain clear of Padang, so the coastal regions remained quiet while the war raged inland. The padri gave the coast the appearance of a religious war, and killed or enslaved their adversaries, whom they labeled unbelievers. In 1820, the Padang Highlands were entirely in the hands of the Padris, and with one exception, Raja Muningsha, who knew enough to flee the princely family, was wiped out, while Raffles had constantly refused intention in the strife. The Dutch were not the first to rendering aid to the oppressed. Therefore, they made terms with a party of chiefs, and in consideration of the annexation of Minangkabau kingdom, the Dutch stepped into the fray and defeated the Padris. As the Dutch historians record, the chiefs had no authority to hand over the territory to Holland. On the other hand, the Padris had no right to keep it. The Padri likewise had overrun the southern part of Batak land, forcibly converting the heathen to Mohammedanism. The Dutch now took possession of this territory. Thus, the first Batak strip came under European rule. A final word may be said concerning the eastern islands of Banka and Biliton. While the western islands remained for long almost untouched by civilized nations, Banka and Biliton underwent much the same fortunes as their main island. Banka and Biliton at one time were part of the Javanese kingdom of Majapahit, and after the fall of this kingdom they became independent. By turn they belonged to the kingdom of Johore on the peninsula and Minangkabau. Next, they were ruled by the Sultan of Bantam in West Java, and finally, through an alliance by marriage, they came under the Sultan of Palembang in 18th century. The first contact with the East Indian Company dated in 1617, while in 1668 officials of the company resided in Banka. The island came into prominence in 1701. 1709, where tin was discovered there. In 1812, the English seized Banka While on an expedition against the Sultan of Palembang in 1816, it was returned to the Dutch. The dominant population at present is Malay and Mohammedan, most of it derived from Palembang. The races and people of Sumatra, three races are to be found in Southern Asia. In the order of their probable migration into the region they are the Negrito, the Featherweight, and the Malaysian. The most important characteristics of the Negritos are short stature under 150 cm, kinky hair, dark skin, black brown eyes, and brachycephalic skulls. This race is found in the Andaman Islands, in the Philippines, and in the Malay Peninsula, the Semangs. No Negritos and little trace of Negrito blood is to be found in Sumatra on the adjacent islands. The Vedud race, of which the feathers of Ceylon are the purest type, is more widespread than the Negrito. The Veduids are of small stature, 158 until 153 until 158 centimeter for the men. They have a brown skin color, but are lighter than the pygmies. They have wavy, coarse black hair, heavy, heavy eye ridges, and rotating foreheads. Their noses are flat, with the roots dipping into the face, while the nostrils are elevated. Their faces are broad but narrow towards the sharply rotating chin. The mouth opening is large, but the lips are narrow. The feathers are very dolichocephalic and have very small skulls. The feathers of southern Asia are never unmixed with other blood, nor have they preserved their original language. The Senoi of Central Sakai is the poor remnant. Likewise, one believes that the feathers of Ceylon are the remains of the ancient pre-Davidian race, which at one time was spread over the whole of India, while Saracen thinks that the 12 of Celebes are related to the Veda. The Swan believes them to be more closely connected with the Senoi. Traces of Vedud blood are to be found according to Heine Garden in further India for the sources of Irrawaddy to the southwest China, especially among the Moi and the Kha. Very strong Vedud influence, as noted by pronounced wave hair, is to be seen among the Sompen in the center of Big Nicobar. In Sumatra, Vedud blood is most prominent among the Kubu of Palembang, of which two racial types are to be distinguished, and the Sakai of the province of Siak. The latter people bear close racial and cultural resemblances to their namesakes of the peninsula, and probably are of sort to them of them. Wavy-haired individuals are likewise to be found in Enggano and Mentawei, and even among the Bataks. It may be concluded that the more primitive Malaysians of Sumatra show the most Vedud admixture. Likewise, this one has demonstrated a common Vedud culture, of which the Senoi are typical. These people are nomadic and live on the products of hunting and fishing. They build very primitive huts and wear tapa clothes. The Senoi use blowpipes and poison arrows, but they also have bows and arrows. They are monogamous and have no actual chieftaincy. They are lacking in agriculture. They are lacking in agriculture and have the dog as the sole domestic animal. They lack metalwork, weaving, and pottery. The Malaysians began migrating into Insulinde from Asia at an early period. Heinegger in his research concerning the origin and early wanderings of the Malaysian Austronesian believes that they came from South China somewhat later than 2000 BC. In Indonesia, the earliest straight-haired yellow race with or displaced the kinky and wavy-haired races. Kober, following Sullivan, has divided the Malaysians into two types. The first, an early type, he calls Indonesians. He calls Indonesian and is dolichocephalic. The second he calls Malayan and is brachycephalic. The Indonesians are supposed to be the inland mountain dwellers of the Philippines and elsewhere in Indonesia, while the, while the Malayans are the Ocos dwellers. The Indonesians likewise are supposed to have smaller bodies and broader noses. This distinction has not been followed by later anthropologists. As Henry Gelden points out, the Malaysians cannot be subdivided according to to head form, since some of the oldest Malaysians in the archipelago, as the Punan of central Borneo, are brachycephalic. As a rule, however, we find oligocephalic Malaysians in eastern Indonesia, where there is Papuan influence in the interior of Borneo and among some mountain peoples of the Philippines. The customary distinction now made is between Malaysians or Malays or Proto-Malaysians and Deutero-Malaysians. Proto-Malaysians are merely those Malaysians who are relatively free from other racial mixtures, Hindu, Chinese, Arabic, and dwell in the interior of the islands. Good examples of the Proto-Malaysians are the Bataks, Dayaks, Toraja of Celebes, and Igorot, the mountain dwellers of the Philippines. The Japanese present a good type of the Deutero-Malaysians. Anthropologically, the Proto-Malaysians are distinguished from the Cosmalays by a shorter body, longer head, darker skin, broader and more concave nose, and broader mouth. Thus, it has been shown that the Indonesians Austronesians came to Sumatra probably sometime about 2000 AD and certainly long before the Christian era and the days of Hindu influence. When they arrived, they found an aboriginal population composed partly of entirely Vedud and Negrito races. The question has often been discussed as to the cultural elements which they brought with them. This has been done by showing that certain fundamental words are found in all Indonesian languages, and that the objects corresponding to these words were therefore brought from the continent. First come tropical plants, sugarcane, bananas, bamboo, and rotan. The most important in the category is the word for rice, beras. Beras really means fruit, and elsewhere the word for rice is found signifying food. This cereal, however, at least of the dry variety, actually seems to have been introduced in the western part of Indonesia before the days of Hindu influence. It was grown everywhere in Sumatra, but not on the western islands of Mentawei and Enggano. Heidegger believes that the primitive Indonesians has some form of outrigger canoe, while Crum states that the Indonesian language contains both the words from both and seal. This would show that the Indonesians came from river country, if not actually from the sea. Even the primitive Mentawai islanders has large warboats with sails. Among the primitive Indonesian animals, the dog, pig, chicken may safely be assumed. The carabao, perhaps even the tamed variety, is usually thought to be Indonesian. Cattle again are entirely lacking to Mentawai and Enggano. Ironworking was known on the mainland and was assimilated by the islanders. In most of the languages Pandai, workman is used especially for a smith. Ironworking, however, is unknown in Mentawai and Enggano, and the word Pandai is of recent introduction in Mentawai. Heidegger adds, on archaeological and ethnographic grounds, the following traits are being probably of primitive Indonesian origin: non-coiled pottery, mats, bone lens points, bone tools, and raw points, stone and muscle rings are as decorations and perhaps as money, stone bed ornamentation, piled weddings, the cultivation of millet and rice, megalithic monuments, head hunting, possibly tapa preparation. I myself have tried to demonstrate that the primitive Indonesian was lurking in all ship forms of family, that is, in unilateral descendant,
and the accompanying exogamy. In other words, the Indonesian social organization was similar in form to that of the Negrito and Bedoid. The ship organization was brought from South India, along with other traits of higher culture, but remained foreign to Mentawei, Enggano, and the primitive Malaysians of Sumatra. On linguistic grounds, this is sound by the lack of the native term for mother's border in Indonesian. It seems probable that the earliest waves of Indonesians are still found isolated in Mentawai, lack certain cultural traits brought by succeeding waves. Among these traits, lacking to the rival were rice, cattle, iron working and megalithic monuments. Absence of autocratic monarchs may be postulated for the primitive Indonesians as well as for all other very primitive peoples, and the Hindu did little to better this condition. The great power enjoyed by the chiefs of Nias may be ascribed to Polynesian concept of divine descendant of chiefs. Political and political and linguistic divisions. There are 14 main dialects of the Malaysian language spoken on Sumatra, together with many subdialects. These divisions are shown on the accompanying linguistic map. As usual among primitive peoples, it is difficult to obtain agreement among the authors regarding the subdialects in my map, which I have taken from Colette. The Bataks are arranged according to 6 subdialects. Yet the Batak villages, if they are far apart, each speak a little differently from one another, even though they are placed in the same linguistic group. Minangkabau is, as we have shown, the mother of the Malay language. Since the original Malays immigrated from here, the Minangkabau language of today varied a bit in dropping and charging of consonants from ordinary spoken Malay. The customary Malay is understood everywhere on Sumatra, regardless on the local dialect spoken, since it is the common language of the schools. Through Islam, the Malays lost the ancient Sanskrit alphabet and took the Arabic. The Dutch in turn have taught the natives the use of Roman letters in the schools, so that Arabic is becoming less and less used for ordinary purposes. The Latin script is well adapted for all Malayo-Polynesian languages. All alphabets adapted from the, all alphabets adapted from the Sanskrit are still to be found among the natives of Lampong, Rejang, and the Bataks. The first two forms are closely related to one another. The written characters and sketch on bamboo, tree bark, or certain forms of leaves. North Sumatra is the home of Aceh, the Gayo, and the Alas. The topography of this part of Sumatra is different from that of the remainder of the island. Instead of mountainous regions and long plains, there are here high plateaus with bordering mountains. The sea water shed lie in the center of the island and longer in the west. Hence, the races of the northern part of Sumatra are not divided by east and west divisions, mountains and plains, but extend across the island. The lowland and civilized Aceh occupy the coastal strip. The mountainous Gayo and Alas are in the center. A later, a later chapter will describe the Aceh and Gayo, but little at present is known about the Alas. The north-central part of western Sumatra is occupied by the important districts of Tapanuli and Padang Lawas. These districts are inhabited by the Bataks. Padang Lawas was acquired by the Dutch in 1838 after the Patri War. Further south, the division of Kurinci is best known and is the most thickly populated of the highland divisions of the districts of Jambi. Most of the people here are Minangkabau in language and custom. The center of Minangkabau is situated in Padang Highlands, a short distance by rail from the seaport on the west coast, Padang. The Padang Highlands are subdivided into three parts. 1. Padang Panjang Long Plains. 2. The deep-lying, long and narrow valleys of the Mir Wan Sikarak. Tanah Datar Flatlands, which spreads southeast and south from Merapi and Sago. The province and people of Rejang have received the special attention of Marsden in his book on Sumatra. Rejang came under the Dutch rule in 1860 as a result of a small expedition. The native of Lampong, the most southern part of Sumatra, live mostly among the river banks of the Sekampung. But even this region is but scantily inhabited. Lekerkerker believes that the population was formerly of the same ancient strata as the Bataks, but it is well known that later the people became much mixed with the Sundanese. From ancient times, there has been much trade across the Strait of Sunda, and many place names in Lampung are Sunda or Javanese. The mountaineers of Lampong have a slightly variant dialect and call themselves Orang Abung. The plains people are called Orang Pablan. The location of customs Kubu and other primitive peoples of Sumatra with varied admixture will be treated in the later chapter. Population. According to 14th edition of Encyclopedia Britannica, the total population of Sumatra numbers 6,290,000 people, of which 19,259 are Europeans and Eurasians, and 229,775 are Asiatics, including Chinese. One third of Europeans and 4/5 of the Chinese live on the east coast. This population could be many times increased, for Java has only 40 million native inhabitants, in spite of its being one quarter the size. Sumatra has 13.2 people per square kilometer. Java has 266. The main native elements of the population are 1,500,000 Minangkabau, 1,000,000 Bataks, and 650,000 Atjeh. The religion of Sumatra is predominantly Mohammedan. For of the total population, only 170,000 are Christian and 300,000 heathen. Protestant missionary stations are established among the Bataks in Nias and in Mentawei. Naturally, only the heathen and not the Mohammedans can be converted.